Hello, Gelato Familia. I'm George, the Disney Italiano, coming to you with another video, back with my good friend, Mr. Jay Sherer, an award-winning director, writer, producer, all that good jazz. He has done a little film called No Vacancy. If you haven't checked it out, definitely give it a look-see because I absolutely loved it. But unfortunately, we're not here to talk about No Vacancy. We're here to talk about his newest project, Disclosure. And I have actually watched this several times because
Nice.
I have to say, like, I really liked it when I first watched it, but the second, the third, and the fourth time I watched it, it's like I can't get enough of it. It's
That's
just like
awesome.
it's just, and I'm not being biased, but it's like I absolutely love that, and I know we'll get into it more. But before I'm rambling on here, Jay, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about the film. I'm very appreciative that you had me on, and yeah, it'll be really fun to. If anybody has any comments, they can leave comments down below, and I'll check back in every now and again. You can let me know if anybody has any questions for us. But yeah, I'm excited about this.
Awesome. So before we get to watching the short film Disclosure, and we invite you to watch it and enjoy it along with us, as I was saying that it's one of those short subjects that when you watch it more than once,
Mm.
you start to flesh the story out more,
Mm.
to get a little bit of a better understanding.
Hmm.
And I won't give it away up until the fact of when we watch it, but I love with what you did with both No Vacancy and this one, where you give us an ending,
Mm.
but it's not a closed, sign, seal, deliver ending. It kind of
Mm.
gives us a little bit of a cliffhanger to where we have to set up our own ending
Mm.
to what we would like to see, what would be
Yeah.
the next step.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love that.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So I thought you will bring it up now so that
All
way
right.
we watch
Let's
it
watch it. Yeah. Let's do
and
it.
we can discuss afterwards. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here's Mr. Jay Shearer's Disclosure. Which, really quick, Jay, I just have to say the soundtrack that plays throughout this whole thing is a banger.
Oh, I agree. And Sam did an amazing job.
Absolutely.
Where would you like to start?
I propose we open with the little green men.
UFOs and the associated paranormal phenomena? I don't know, it's a very broad topic.
Are you a Catholic, miss?
I'm only here because the top brass sent me a nasty gram when I declined the first time. So you tell me.
I've tracked down information that many people find uncomfortable, but sometimes the truth is uncomfortable.
Wouldn't it be easier if you just point me in the right direction?
Pretend I don't know anything.
Right. Well, I think we have to conclude that the US government is lying to us.
What I know is classified.
How about the preponderance of evidence among witness testimony? Do you know how reliable witness testimony is? It isn't. So what do I know? I know that UFO experiencers are, to put it bluntly, unreliable.
Several species of extraterrestrial life forms have visited Earth. I possess documents alluding to 4 known species, but I believe there may be many more, quite possibly as many as a dozen.
Mhm. I know a lot, but I'm more interested in what I don't know. Like who you are and how you got my number.
Do you believe in God?
Why don't we pronounce the K in knowledge?
What?
Because we haven't acknowledged it yet. Captain Hawkins used to tell me that joke every time I look the way you look right now.
Super helpful. I'm not getting anywhere.
Not yet.
We're running out of time.
Isn't that the human condition?
If you're trying to make me feel better, it's not working.
I've got bad news, Audrey. It's always like this.
Send in the next one.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to need evidence. Details, please.
According to the people that I've interviewed, the trustworthy sources, not so much the kooky ones, the most compelling evidence I've found is in crash retrieval.
Evidence? There is none. And that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, Joe Schmo claims he's been abducted. Batty Betty says she saw a flying saucer. Sure. How was their eyesight? Were they drug tested? Hypnotized? Perhaps they were just paranoid schizophrenics. The point is, there is no hard evidence.
Here is a summary of my research, starting with Operation Overcast and Paperclip. At the close of World War II, the Nazis had exceptional avionics, rocketry, and other advanced propulsion concepts, including anti-gravity. What the U.S. did not get, the Soviets did. I've included related topics, remote viewing, crash retrieval, and a secret mind control project, MK. Okay. MK Ultra. All of these projects were inspired by Nazi scientists. So the question then becomes, how did the Germans make these technological leaps?
Don't go sticking your nose in where it don't belong, lady. What is this, some kind of congressional oversight bullshit? Well, it's a waste of time and money, especially mine. In case I haven't been clear, let me just say it again. It's classified. You do know what classified means, right?
They sparkled like topaz, and all four looked alike. Each was made to look like a wheel, intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the four directions the creatures faced. Their rims were high and awesome, and all four rims were full of eyes all around. Does that sound familiar?
Who else are you meeting with?
No major world power, that includes the Vatican, has been forthcoming with disclosure. Why be vague?
Let me be anything but. Just because you went to college instead of getting a ring on your pretty little finger does not entitle you to information that I will not give to the President of the United States.
Why do any of us employ deception? Because it benefits us to do so. We use deception to give ourselves an advantage. You look at nature. Deception is practically a tenet of biological evolution. Now ask yourself this: what benefit can be derived from this deception?
I have two theories. One, they believe that disclosure could cause the thin fabric of society to tear. That every human might live under ever-present fear of an alien invasion. This could give way to anarchy. Traditional structures of power, influence, and control could all be uprooted, but But the more likely reason, point number 2, is the alien technologies that they have discovered provide them with a competitive advantage, money, power, perhaps even superior cognitive abilities.
The Catholic Church has as many arms as a tangle of octopuses, and even more viewpoints. But we do believe in the paranormal. Yes? We see the demon-possessed. We hear the stories of miracles every day. Those who do not have a faith label these as ghosts and ghouls and goblins and aliens. But we know these beings. Extraterrestrials, indeed, but not from other planets. Scripture has given us names for these entities, as they were also created by our Heavenly Father.
Maybe they don't know the answer. Or maybe they don't want anybody else to know the answer.
Immediately after World War II, we found ourselves embroiled in the Cold War, a war we're very much still fighting 2 decades later. Imagine that you found advanced craft from another civilization while simultaneously operating under the existential threat of nuclear annihilation. It would make sense that you would keep those craft hidden, especially if you could reverse engineer them to use against your sworn enemies. So you give the specs to Lockheed, Northrop, General Electric, and other companies to manufacture weapons for you. For us. To me, it's completely logical.
Esther, have you detected any lies or deception?
One sec. Okay. Voice data analysis indicates no outright lies, but as you can probably tell, several interviewees are avoiding full transparency.
Maybe our intel was bad.
Or we're being duped?
There is that. Look, if there's been a leak or an epiphany, you'll uncover it.
Oh, and if it's too late?
That's why I'm here. You've got this, Audrey. I'll send in the cranky general.
What else could explain this phenomenon?
What do you think I'm gonna say? We're done here.
I think it's a combination of things. Some people are seeing advanced classified military aircraft. Others are seeing natural phenomena. I do think there's a spiritual component, but that's my personal opinion. And of course, others are just hallucinating. I do still think there's a compelling case to be made that we've been visited. That's what my research suggests.
Drug use, alcohol, mental disorders, weather balloons, frisbees. The list is long. There are no alien life forms.
Is it possible God created other beings on other planets? Sure, it's possible. But this is a spiritual war, not a cosmic one.
I have done research into swamp gases, ball lightning, advanced military technologies, many other topics, but I find these explanations less than satisfactory. Of course, hoaxes and fabricated stories are common, but the data clearly points to UFOs and aliens.
Feynman said it better than I ever could. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers which might be wrong.
Thank you for your time.
I don't know who you are or who you work for. And yet, here I am talking to you about stuff that nobody is supposed to know about? Why don't you tell me why anyone in our profession would be vague?
Because the holes in stories get filled with useful misdirection?
And how am I supposed to fill the holes in this story?
What are you not telling me?
I think I've told you everything you need to know. Belief. It's a funny thing, right? You and I, we're free to believe anything we want to.
And you really believe it's more interesting to live not knowing?
Look up the Feynman quote. Comes in handy in our line of work.
Almost filled up my bingo card. Aliens, remote viewing, angels and demons, craft retrieval.
Don't forget about the misogyny.
Wild time, the 60s. What's the verdict?
I don't know. Something doesn't feel right.
That's the time change. Time travel scrambles the brain a bit.
Hmm.
But hey, we got what we needed, right? We're not on their radar. Let them go on blaming aliens. You hungry? You wouldn't believe how good Mickey D's in the 1960s is. It's a must. Come on, you're buying.
Esther, that Richard Feynman quote, the one Riker referenced, I need more info on that.
Coming right up. Full quote. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers which might be wrong. It's from an interview Dr. Feynman did for Horizon.
Horizon?
Science show on BBC Two. The interview was part of episode 9 of series 18.
Esther, when did that episode air?
Sorry, this can't be right.
When, Esther?
November 23rd, 1981. But, Audrey, how is that possible?
Shit.
Yeah, I know that guy.
By the way, did you see the special thanks section?
Yes, I'm gonna actually. I'm still gonna keep.
Okay, go.
Woo!
There it is.
I made it into some format of a movie.
You did. You absolutely did. Yeah, for those of you who didn't catch it, Hollow Gelato is in there as a special thanks because George has been really George is really knowledgeable about film, so having him be able to ask questions and stuff is really, really rewarding for me. And he, before the movie came out, we talked about it, and we talked about the fact that it was coming out, and so I was like, dude, I gotta have a special thanks to Hollow Gelato.
Yes, absolutely, and I paid him. But anyway,
yeah, we could have had a little bit more budget, but
yes, no, just kidding. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it,
of
and
course.
I love your work. And as I said before we watched it, I'm not just being biased because we're friends and everything, but you do phenomenal work that I feel that a lot of people need to recognize because like the film industry, it's a very dog eat dog world out there, and it's like a lot of times smaller production companies or smaller indie films don't get recognized a whole
Right.
lot. And I think honestly they need to more. I think now more than ever because I feel like they're going to be the comeback kings of cinema because it just seems like these high-end big budget films coming from these top-notch film companies, they're just unfortunately, they're just not doing it.
Yeah.
They're not bringing in the bacon. So, I mean, you could take a movie like, I mean, I know a lot of people don't really watch it, but like Terrifier,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
that movie is like a very low budgeted movie, but I mean, it grew legs. It became, a life of its own. But going back to Disclosure,
Yeah.
I have to ask because after now just watching it again, this marks number 5
Nice.
watching it.
I
So,
think it's for me, it's like 35. I've seen it so many times.
well, actually, that actually is my question. How is it for you, for someone like me that is watching like Disclosure or No Vacancy?
Mhm.
It's me as the consumer, if you
Mhm.
will, as
Mhm.
the viewer that is being entertained, informed, what have you. But what is it like to watch it, not just as a director, but as a director that it's your material?
Yeah. I would say this. I would say that it is two things at the same time. It is incredibly satisfying because you get to see the work that everyone put into the project that came out of your head. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a really satisfying thing because so much of it ends up being actually better than what was in your head when you started writing it. And that part of it's awesome. The slightly annoying part of it is that you start to notice all of the things where you're like, oh yeah, that could have been better, or oh yeah, that's that is the way it is. But I would say in both films, the really cool thing is that my experience has been far more of the, oh yeah, I'm really proud of everybody for what they accomplished with this, as opposed to being like, oh, that could be better. You know what I mean? Like I don't. And I think we work really hard for that not to be the case, but there's always going to be something that you find that you're like, oh, that probably could have been better. You know what I mean? That just is the nature of doing any kind of work. It's probably not going to be absolutely perfect, but yeah.
Do you remember like watching certain scenes? Do you take yourself back and saying like, I remember that moment. I remember what it took to bring a certain scene or a certain reaction to a character. Like, does it take you back to that place?
Yeah, a little bit. Although I don't tend to think about my projects in like that level of detail unless there was something about it that I learned, or if that I was trying experimentally and it worked or didn't work. You know what I mean? Like those are the kind of things that I remember the most, because I'll just give you a couple of examples. Like one of them is with No Vacancy. There's a couple scenes specifically where I thought to myself, oh, this is what I'm going to tell my DP and what I'm going to tell my actors that we're going to do, that I want to do, is going to be very difficult to accomplish it and make it like look good, and then when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we pulled that off. Like that was amazing, right? Like, so there's that experience where you're like, yeah, I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I had it in my head. I put it down on paper. So I even storyboarded a lot of this stuff. And then the question is always kind of like, well, did you pull it off? And I think I remember those really well. The other thing I tend to remember is the things that we tried and why they didn't work. So, for example, with Disclosure, we had a shot where when Audrey steps back and stands up, we see it from the side in this particular cut, but we had actually we filmed on iPhone. So anybody watching, like, we filmed this on an iPhone, and we had a gimbal set up so that Nathan was being camera op at the time. He's the director of photography, and we would put the camera behind her head, and then as she pushed her chair back, we would move back, and then as she stood up, we would stand up, and then we would swing the camera all the way around the table to see her face. And we just had too small of a space, and we didn't have really enough time. I think we did like 7 takes of that, but none of them were like, yeah, that looks really good. We were kind of like, oh, we need this or we need that, and we just had to abandon it because we ran out of time to be able to do it. And I don't think it takes away from the film, but I just remember that. I remember thinking like, oh, if I want to do that again, I got to think about it a little bit differently. You know what I mean? So I think those are the 2 things I remember, like things that went like extraordinarily better than I could imagine. With Disclosure, one of the things that went extraordinarily better than I could imagine is that our gaffer had a truck full of stuff for filmmaking, and one of the things he had is this little tiny machine that is it moves the camera along the dolly. And so you set it to what kind of speed you want. So all of the push ins and the push outs, there's only a few of them at the very end there. All of those I felt like were critical to kind of like having some minimal camera movement. And his little machine worked like a charm. It was so cool the way it worked. So that's something I remember being like awesome about Disclosure. So I remember more of the extremes is what you end up remembering, you know, because there's so much work you put into it in a really short amount of time, and you're just like, oh, okay, like cool, we did it, you know.
That is true, very true. Now, when it came to the actors, was there anything that they personally ad-libbed or put their own personal touch in that maybe wasn't in the initial script?
I would say so. Like in No Vacancy, we had Spencer, and Spencer was really, really funny. So he ad-libbed a bunch of stuff. In this script, I would say the ad-libbing was really, really minor. Most of it came from Fabian, who plays Peter Rockford. He's the guy who originally we can't see his face. He's talking to Audrey, and then we can see his face later. And he would mess around with like saying, do I want to say McDonald's in the 1960s? Do I want to say Mickey D's in the 1960s? Like, how do I want to say that? He played around with that a little bit. But this script is a little bit like, for example, it's way easier to ad-lib with comedy. Right. It's also easier to ad lib if you have like angry confrontation and it's kind of like get after each other, you know? What's more difficult is that each one of these characters is so structured that it's hard to ad lib because like let's just say that Jeffrey Bigger, who played Dr. Townsend, he has the glasses and the bow tie. If he had started ad libbing, I might have been like, oh, I've got to cut a bunch of that out because I can only show him for so long before people are like, I got to move on to the next one. You know what I mean? So I think it would have been really, really difficult to ad lib on this. So there was a little bit here and there, but for the most part, like people were just pretty, you know, dedicated to the script the way that it was.
Okay. And I do have to say, I mean, I wasn't there personally, but I bet McDonald's was pretty good in 1960.
Yeah. That's one of the things I hear. I hear that. I hear it's awesome, so I would love to try it. It's really funny because I really like working with actors before we ever show up on set, right? Like just having conversations to kind of get a feel for who their character is and that we're on the same page, because it can be really difficult to direct people in the moment if you're on a completely different spectrum of like what we assume this character should be. And Fabian called me up and he was like, how many times has Rockford been to the 1960s? Like, you know, he says he likes the Mickey D's in the 1960s. He must be there often. And I was like, yeah, he's been there before, and he does love it there. He likes it there. Like so getting a feel for those characters and how that gives Fabian the ability to go like, oh, I can say it in this way then, or I can say it in that way. You know, like in which way he wants to kind of play around with it. So there's lots of and that's a good distinction to make there too. I said there's not a lot of ad libbing, but there is a lot of personality that they are putting into the character that's not necessarily on the page, right? So and that's when an actor really embraces a character and really brings that character to life. And I was really impressed, both in No Vacancy and Disclosure, how people were really dedicated to their work. Because you hear all the time people are like, oh, they're not really dedicated, they're just trying to get a paycheck, and it's kind of not. I have not had that experience. Everybody I have worked with has been super professional and super dedicated to the project, which is awesome.
Well, that's good. Yeah, because I would be. But anyway, no, because I love this stuff because I get so intrigued, not even just by what we watch as the final product, of a film, but also what it takes behind the scenes and the process and and everything. So I absolutely love that. Now, when it comes to each individual character, I loved how, depending on what the character's own personal background was, of how their own belief came to be for extraterrestrial or UFO sightings, or is there life outside of our planet? I love how each character depicted their own personal outlook, where it could be similar to one another or it could be different, but more so like the Catholic priest, like of how, he's saying, well, yeah, there could be, morphological beings out there, but instead of it being cosmic, it's more internal in, religion, and like they were created by God, and everything. So of how each character kind of depicts within their own background. I love how they're all different, but yet they all kind of tell their own story that links back into the same subject matter. And I love that.
Yeah, that was really fun. That was really fun. I mean, coming up with all the because I listened to all the podcasts, and so I was listening to a bunch of people on podcasts talk about all of these types of things, and it was just so fascinating because, like, the beliefs that people would have were so intriguing. I remember that I was listening to the Danny Jones podcast, and I can't remember what the guest's name was, right? But the guest goes, Danny, there's so much BS in this world about aliens and stuff like that. It's just completely ridiculous. There's just so much BS. And I'm just going to tell you right now, people will say there's like 12 species of aliens. No, Danny, there's 140 species of aliens. I was like, I thought he was going to say there are none. You know what I mean? Like, I thought he was going to, but there's so many different kinds of beliefs about these things that you get a chance to play with a pretty diverse set of characters,
Yes. Yeah, and I like that. And yeah, because of the subject matter, you can explore, like, to go a little bit deeper of like, like what this character can possibly say based off of their background and what this person can say, so on and so forth. But then you also intertwined it with what I like to call like the Back to the Future syndrome, where
right.
you have like the time travel, but it's not even just time travel, but it's like a set of beings going back in time to figure out the true answers to something that they want to consider classified. And then finding out that by going back into the past, it predicted what I'm trying to think of how to say this, because I get it, but I'm trying to figure out the audience of the people that are set in 1966 that are not the time travelers, especially one in particular, knew something that was 15 years later into the future. And then boom, that's when you get that cliffhanger cut, and you're like, dang, like now I want to know more.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the feature film comes in. So the last two films we've done have been related to feature scripts that we want to try and make films out of. And part of what was that's in the feature film is that there's actually a third time traveler from the future that travels back in time with Peter, which is played by Fabian. He's the guy that's standing at the end of the table, and Audrey, who's the main character. And that character's name is Malik Booker. And Malik Booker in the future, I'm spoiling the feature film a little bit. In the future, the world is run by a global government. It's not just run by, there's no such thing as countries. It's one global government that oversees everything. And in that future, there's a lot of people who don't like what the global government is doing and what the global government is focused on, and so they're fighting against that. And the government, of course, calls them terrorists, and they call themselves freedom fighters because the government's is overly dictating what is in people's lives. And so what we learn is that Malik, this is the big spoiler, Malik is the one that travels back in time and is working with the FBI in 1966, which is what Riker's character is, because he wants to change the future and make sure that the global government doesn't take over, right? And so it's this, and then to make it all like way crazier, Malik and Audrey are in a relationship. So they're lovers, and so she has to come to terms with like, well, what do I do? Do I work for my government or do I work with this person that I love? I don't know which one I should choose, right? So again, a lot more conflict, and the story is a little bit different, but it's still surrounding the same kind of thing, you know.
Well, I definitely am looking forward to that. Just by that little synopsis of like what the feature film would be. That's awesome, because again, and I think I mentioned this before when I had you on prior to the release of Disclosure, and I mentioned this, but I think it bears repeating again. I think making any kind of film is challenging enough, but I feel like a short film subject matter is more challenging than a feature length, because you have a little bit more to dabble with by adding something very extended. When you have a short subject and you have to cram all this information in where it makes sense, it keeps your audience engaged, it has basically like a first act, a middle act, and then an ending, but in a short form, I feel can be very much challenging. Would you say that would be the case?
Yeah, and I haven't done a feature yet, so I can't speak to this. I mean, I've written them, but I haven't filmed one. I haven't directed one yet. My thought process, not having directed one, is that at least with a short film, the benefit you have is that you don't have a long production schedule. So that is a blessing and a curse, but we had 2 days to film it. We didn't have 3 days to film it. If we had a third day, we would have been in big trouble, because we would have had to like wait like a month to film it or something, because people weren't available. I had them available for those 2 days, and that was it. So from an arrangement of project management, it's a little bit simpler because it's just a short film. There's not as many things going on. But to your point, I think that what happens is when you have more time to draw things out, a short film kind of just needs to, and this is why No Vacancy is a very untraditional short film, and we made it on purpose. It's 21 minutes long, as opposed to Disclosure, which is it's 17 minutes, but technically it's like a 15-minute film with a couple minutes of credits. And the difference between them is like an extra 6 minutes is like an extra short film on top of it, right? And the reason why we did that with No Vacancy was because No Vacancy has a distinct 3-act structure. There's a act 1, these things happen, it's a setup. Act 2, conflict happens, and then act 3, there's resolution. And the act 3 is kind of like an abbreviated resolution, but it's still there, right? It's 3-act structure. So we did that on purpose so that if a studio saw what we were doing and said, oh, these people obviously know how to tell a 3-act structure, so if I greenlight their feature film, they should be able to tell that story, no problem. With Disclosure, we were going for a much more traditional short film, which is kind of like introduce conflict immediately and then have like this kind of what I would call like a gotcha resolution, right? Because usually short films that are successful, in my opinion, have like a twist ending, which is really hard to pull off, by the way, or they have a really funny ending. Right, that's like 2 of the things that you can do with the short film. That every once in a while you can have an endearing one. That's a lot harder to pull off because you only have so much time with these characters, right? So when you only have so much time with the characters, it's harder. Like, for example, I just told you about a feature film where the conflict is interpersonal and global and time bound in terms of plot, character, and conflicts. Well, that takes a long time for me to take a character. It's really hard to take a character from one perspective to a completely different perspective in a short film. You can do it in a feature film because this event can happen, and then this event can happen, and then this event can happen. Now they're on an arc, right? But in a short film, it's like, well, how many events can you have happen to them in the course of 15 minutes? So yeah, to your point, I think short films have, it's almost like short films have a little bit of their own flavor, or a little bit of their own way of that you have to think about making them, that is slightly different from a feature film, for sure.
That makes sense. Yeah, I could definitely see that. And again, I love that kind of process.
Yeah.
It's like someone else can listen to that and be like, "Huh, okay." Oh, and, let's
Yeah.
but for me, like, that is like so intriguing, like, of how the step process of what it really takes to put all this together and make it so cohesive.
Yeah.
And make it understandable for the viewer, and it's something that you always, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I've never directed anything. I would love to. I always wanted to make my own film and what have you, but you want to make a film for you, first and foremost, but it also has to be engaging, because if you want to share it out to the world, it has to be something that would be engaging to everybody else.
Totally. Yeah. And I think my reflection and study on that, and this is something actually that I think that, like, we talk about this thing a lot, George, when we talk about Pixar, or when we talk about Disney films, and we talk, or Universal films, and whether or not they resonate with audiences. I think a lot of times it is in the tension between who was this film made for. And here's the way that I try, and I'm not saying I'm the best at it or anything like that, but because I think it's always like a moving target to a certain extent. But here's how I try and think about that. I think about it in such a way of like, okay, what are things that I deal with? So like with No Vacancy is all about shame and guilt and isolation. And so I think about that, and I think, okay, I deal with shame and guilt. In fact, that's quite frankly a universal emotion. Maybe there are certain people who we might have called like sociopaths or psychopaths who don't have that set of emotions that they deal with, but the most of the population does, right? And so I think about that and I go, okay, well, how does this show up in people's lives then? How does this topic and this thing show up in various people's lives? And that's where that movie comes from. So what I'm trying to find is what do I struggle with that is also shared by as big of part of the population as we can find. And I think the bummer is that a lot of times people have messages they want to get across, or experiences that they've had that they want to communicate, and unfortunately they're not able to find the shared human experience in that. I'm going to give you an example, because it's a movie you and I have talked about before. Two movies that you and I have talked about before. I don't know if we've talked about them in this way, but I've definitely talked to some people about it in this way. Turning Red, which is very, what word do I want to use? Some people love it, some people don't, right? And I want to compare that with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I do have on my mom's side, I do have grandparents that were first generation American, so the immigrant experience is sort of close to us, but not close to me personally. Okay, and I watched Turning Red, and I had a lot of questions, because I was kind of like, I feel like this is a really interesting movie to someone whose parents immigrated here and they're first generation. I'm like second, third generation, and only one of my grandparents fits that definition. So like, I'm not sure I understand I'm not sure I understand how the characters are going through their emotions. And what that means is that there are some times when I think, like, for example, the way Turning Red ends, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but hopefully everybody's seen it. The mother figure just turns out to be kind of a bad guy. Like, there's no redemption for the mother. Like, I guess, Mom, you have to deal with me the way that I am, and I'm a red panda, and you got to deal with that. And I think that for me as a viewer, I'm like, wait a minute. There's no redemption for, like, there's nothing that we can do about the mom. Like, the mom is just a bad guy, and then we're just gonna end the movie that way, right? Like, she can't be any different. She can't. Whereas I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is essentially the same story. It is about the child of immigrants and how that is an isolating experience, how you kind of rail against what the value system of your parents is because you don't understand it. It makes you odd in the environment that you're in. And yet the story is between a mother and a daughter and a father coming together in the end and learning how to deal with each other's differences and how they interact with the world. And so what it felt like to me is I'm like, I feel like Turning Red is an experience that a lot of people will understand if they come from that very specific kind of mindset. Whereas Everything Everywhere All at Once said, not everyone has come from this mindset. So how do we draw people in to understand and make it more of a shared human experience? Because what we all have found is we all have friends who kind of strayed away and we wanted to bring them back. We all have family who kind of strayed away and then we got to reconnect with them later. And that's what that movie felt like a little bit more. And it didn't feel like you were leaving the parents out to dry or leaving the kid out to dry. There was always a place for them to go. And I think that that's the difference. And by the way, making films is very difficult. The people who made Turning Red might look at me and be like, you missed all the things that we said. Like, you don't get it. I totally acknowledge that. And a lot of people like that movie, but
Yeah, not really, but go on.
But I think that with Everything Everywhere All at Once, it draws into the shared human experience much better and the emotions of the shared human experience. For Disclosure, I wasn't trying to get deeper into a lot of like core emotions like shame and guilt and that kind of thing. I was trying to get more into this curiosity that we all have, or this wonder that we all have about what is actually going on. And there's a lot of different feelings there. There's this discomfort feeling. Some of the characters make us feel uncomfortable when we're watching them because we're like, do I want to believe this person? Some of the other characters kind of make us feel comfortable, but we're like, I'm not sure I agree with where you're coming from. At one point in time, Audrey says, most world powers, even the Vatican, have been vague. And she's saying, and she brings up and the Vatican because it's supposed to be a religious institution that's giving us the truth, right? And then so we're playing with those things, and that's because one of the things that we wonder as humans is like, what's going on, and so that to me is kind of what we're trying. But yes, to answer your question more specifically, it is all about finding those places where we have a shared human experience. And that's what I would call you're getting closer and closer to truth when we feel that way when we watch a movie, or when it causes us to think that way.
Okay. And now I have another question from your response to my first
Yeah.
So that was a great kind of example, like when you were mentioning like the two films that have the similarities, but based off of the approach that you could be aiming for a certain demographic, it could either come off something that's very, very successful or not so successul.
Exactly.
So kind of speaking in that same mindset, did you ever think when you were making Disclosure and you finally settled on the subject matter with like the UFOs and aliens and government conspiracy and what have you, did you ever think at the time of putting it all together that you would have had a different setting or a different background, like rather than having it as interrogation, did you think of another kind of like format, or were you just dead set on like this is what I'm going with, point blank, or did you have another idea in mind?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is why I like talking to you, George. Okay, so in this case, in the case of Disclosure, I did not have other options, but it wasn't coming from, I just talked a lot about like storytelling theory and storytelling philosophy. That's not why I didn't have any other options. The feature film does have other options actually. But that's not, I never had it different for the short film because we had a very limited budget. I mean, the budget for Disclosure is like a fourth of the budget of No Vacancy. And so I knew and also Nathan, who did an amazing job as the director of photography. Shout out to Nathan. He's my co-writer. He's never been a director of photography before. This is his first film doing that, right? And so part of the reason why we even wrote Disclosure in the first place was because we have another short film we're going to film that's in the same universe. In fact, it stars the Peter Rockford character. But that film was a lot more difficult to pull off. And as a first time director of photography. I was like, Nathan, this is gonna be too complex for you. Like, I'm putting you in a place that's not really fair to put you in and ask you to do this, right? And so I said, let's dial it back and I'll make it simpler to film. And that's where with the interrogation, it's all at a table. Like, let's make it easier, because otherwise, one of the things I think about filmmaking that you need to think about is that depending on the cast and crew that you have around you, when we watch short films that have lower budgets, a lot of the time it's really cringy is when they try and accomplish something that they just don't have the resources to pull off. Like you couldn't put Spielberg in that position and have him pull it off. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
it's like you can't do that for $1,000. That always costs $15,000. You know, and so I think part of being an independent filmmaker is saying, how do I shoot this in a way where it's still compelling, hopefully. And I know not everyone will love it, but we shoot it in a way that's compelling. And then you have to think about, okay, well, where's the conflict coming from then? Because I'm not going to be doing a lot of camera movement. We're not going to have any like fist fights or gun battles. Like, it's going to be, so how do I have to shoot it in order to make it more compelling to you? But I knew from the beginning that it was going to have to be a kind of interrogation setting, because otherwise it would be too difficult for us to pull off.
Well, I'm glad you went that route, because it's very effective. And I mentioned this from our last conversation. I love even how the angles of the camera that you did, where it's literally the people that are looking at, the interrogator, but they're really looking at us. So it's like we're in the shoes of the interrogator and we're looking into their eyes. We're looking into their expression. We're listening to them. It's like we're feeling them out. It's like, okay, then that's how you kind of create this character profile and how you can depict one character over the other. And that's what I love what you did with that. So I couldn't see Disclosure in any other way.
That's cool. That's cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, shot choices, and you and I talked about this before, but shot choices are one of my favorite things, because as a writer, you're thinking visually in your head, how do I want to do this? And then when you're directing it, it's slightly different, but you're still thinking the same thing. Like, how do I want to depict this? And so I think that, those are really fun. I have a great time doing shot choices.
Yeah. And I love each shot that you have done, like throughout the whole short film, where it's like you have like the front shot, and then you have like the side face, where it's a little bit close up, but it's like, they're talking, but they're not looking into the camera. They're, I love, I usually like to call that the Alfred Hitchcock look,
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah. One of the things we were trying to accomplish with that is that, usually, when you shoot a documentary, and I've never shot one, but I just pay attention to the documentaries that I've been watching. I'll watch a lot of documentaries. Usually the character is talking. So if this is me, and this is like how Disclosure is shot with me talking to the camera, right? That's very unusual in documentaries, because usually what's happening is they're talking like this over here to a person, or maybe even like right over here. So, but I'm not looking directly at the camera. And what that I think does for a documentary filmmaker is it allows us to sit in the room with these people, and it doesn't feel like they're talking to us. It feels like they're talking to an interviewer, and we get to be voyeurs, and we get to say, well, okay, I'm going to observe this person and kind of try and figure out if they're like good or bad, or like however I feel. Whereas when you film it shooting right at them, all of a sudden it's kind of like, whoa, these people are being almost like they're being either aggressive with me, or they're demanding that I have their attention and come to a conclusion about what they're saying. Right. Like, so it's not voyeuristic. It's like, no, I'm in the room with them. Like, and they're telling me things that I'm not sure I know what this is. And it just, I think what it does is, what I'm trying to do with it is I'm trying to put it just slightly off kilter, so that you are like more like, well, who do I believe and why do I believe them? And then simultaneously, I am trying to add more conflict to you as the audience, because now you feel like they're talking to me, as opposed to I'm just casually observing them. I feel like if we were casually observing them, it'd make the film way more boring. Right. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because it definitely, like with the front shot where they're looking closer, more into the camera, it's like, yeah, they're engaging with us. But then when you do the side shot, then it puts you back in that motion where it's like, okay, we're watching two characters interacting with each other. So it kind of takes us out of the element, but still
Yep.
keep us into it. So
Totally. Yeah, totally. And that second shot that you're referencing is kind of more of like, now we're in the documentary shot. So you can, so they're being upfront to you, but then you're also realizing that, yes, I also am a voyeur though. And it's just, that even that's causing some kind of conflict in you about like, which one am I? Do I have to come to a conclusion for this, or am I just kind of observing what's happening? Which is kind of cool. So I don't know. I mean, sometimes you make choices that people watching are like, that's a dumb choice, I don't like it. So it's not like it's a perfect science. This is art, but you try and be as artful as you can in terms of portraying something on screen.
Now, when it came to the subject matter, obviously that we were talking about, with aliens and UFOs and the government and everything, what was the process like that for you to literally like have it in your head and then put it down on paper? Was it something that you woke up one morning and was like, okay, like I have to tell this? Or was this more like a slower process where it's like, I'm thinking of telling something, but I want to get more information on it before I jump into it?
It's a great question. So the first way I'll answer that, because there's two answers to that question. The first way of answering that question is, I just enjoy listening to people talk about it. Now, I'm not obsessed with it. Like, there's some people that will probably watch the film and be like, oh, no. Like, I am so dedicated to these things that I am doing my own research or whatever, right? That's not me. I am in this because I enjoy it, but it's almost more entertaining to me than it is like speaking to me at a core level of like what's going on in the world, right? However, I really respect a lot of the people that I've heard talk about their experiences. And so most of the characters that you see in the film are based off of somebody that I've heard talk on podcasts, probably for an average of 6 to 12 hours per person, right? So I've heard a lot of dialogue from them. I've heard all of the ways they express themselves. And I'm trying to distill all of those viewpoints into like a much shorter time frame. But I was attentive to the 12 hours that I listened to them, or the 6 hours that I listened to them. So in other words, I have an interest in this. Again, it's not changing like the core of what I believe or what I don't believe necessarily, but I'm very intrigued and I'm very open to hearing other people's experiences and trying to see how that affects me. So because of that, it just felt like I was listening to all of this, and I was listening to, like I said, like when I was talking about the guy who said some people think there's only 12 alien species, but there's like 150 of them or whatever, whatever the number he said was. That's a really fascinating character. Like, a person who says that is a fascinating person. And a person who says, hey, I don't think it's aliens at all, I think it's aliens and demons, or I think it's angels and demons, you're like, well, that's a fascinating thing to say, and that's a fascinating thing to believe. So I think that my own fascination, my own curiosity was engaged very early on around this topic. Now, the second thing that encouraged this topic, I think it's somewhere on the wall behind me, or it might be on the desk somewhere, but Nathan and I, the first thing that we ever collaborated on from a writing perspective was a book that we self-published called Time Slingers, and it was a time travel story. And so we already have like a whole giant world built up of like, there is a global union government, there is a base on the moon, there is time travel exists, but most people don't know that it exists. There is a terrorist or freedom fighter faction that is fighting against the global government because they don't agree with what the global government is forcing people to do. They believe it's run by elites. So we already had a world that I was like, oh, this is, and by the way, some of the people who talk about paranormal things or aliens or ufology or whatever, some of them actually believe it's people from the future traveling back in time. So I'm just taking all of those things and saying, I already have a world that exists for us, that we can put these things all together. So it's just drawing from a lot of different sources that I've found really intriguing. I mean, time travel is something that if you're going to dip your toe into it, I mean, you better have a rule set, because you will break your own rules before you know it, because you're like, oh no, I can't do that because that's not how time travel works, right? So you have to have those things in place, and we already had them in place, so it just made sense to kind of sneak this one into.
Nice. Yeah, I could definitely see, like, when it comes to time traveling, it's a very complex subject matter, especially utilizing it in film, and how you have to know where what you're making the character say and do at a specific time, because the further you go into the story, you could have them say and do something that completely contracted to what they just said or did 35 minutes prior into the movie, you know?
Exactly. Or there's other things too, right? Like for example, one of the rules that we have is that when a wormhole opens up and allows you to time travel, you can't just choose where you want to go. Now there might be multiple wormholes that are open at the same time, but you can't just be like, I want to go to this date at this time specifically, right? And the reason for that is because why couldn't the person, whoever has the time machine, just go back 2 seconds before you and then change it again? And they go back 4 seconds before them and change it again. Like it becomes this like crazy battle of like, well, I gotta get there first because then I can change history over and over and over. So what we wrote up as one of our rules is like, well, no, you can't do that because you can only time travel back to a certain location before that wormhole closes. Not to say that it won't open up again in the future, because it could open up again in the future for a similar time frame. But you got to think through these things in your mind, because otherwise it just gets completely ridiculous about what you could do. And I also am not really a believer in the multiverse. I don't think that makes any. I've listened to a lot of people talk about it who really truly believe in it. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. And from a storytelling perspective, I just don't think it's very effective. I think it's one of the reasons why the MCU is not doing as well, is because we have the multiverse. And like, why should I care if something happens in this universe over here when most of the main action is in this universe over here and they'll never talk to each other? Like, who cares? So it's like things like that where I'm like, I'm not saying you can't do it well, because obviously I brought up Everything Everywhere All at Once earlier and they did it really well. But it's not like we're seeing like a trilogy of films from them. That was a one-time thing where it was like, we're going to explore these things and then we're done. So I think like you can use it effectively, but I'm just not that into it, which means I'm playing with a different set of rules than a multiverse is. So yeah, I mean, it can get really, we could spend like an entire podcast or an entire series of podcasts talking about time travel and when it's effective and when it's not.
Oh, absolutely. That would actually be a very interesting topic.
It would be, yeah, it would be.
Because you just speaking about the multiverse, like more so with Marvel. I know I'm going a little bit off subject here, but I think for me, I don't have a problem with the multiverse if they were to just used it like it was mentioned in the story about like what it can. But when you start utilizing that becomes your crutch.
Right.
With everything, it's like, oh well, yeah, well, this makes sense because of the multiverse.
Yeah.
Then you really start going into that wormhole, and it's
that's exactly it.
It's just too much.
That's exactly. So, yeah, I'm gonna let my dog in the room really quick. Just give me 1 second. He's in here scratching at the door. I'm like, oh man. Okay, fine. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Now, I wanted to mention as well. You've probably heard the term where it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I also have that same philosophy that it takes a village to make a film. And you had mentioned several people and what have you. So I have to give kudos to not only you, but to everyone who had some sort of imprint on Disclosure, from the actors to the crew. Good friend of both of ours, Josh Taylor, who did the editing.
Yep.
And again, to the writing and the music composing and everything. And it's just when everyone knows what they're doing and you have a vision and you just kind of put those puzzle pieces together. And then when you look at the final product of how each thing harmonizes with the other, and that's how you know that you have a strong team behind you.
Yeah. We've been really lucky. I mean, both No Vacancy and Disclosure had amazing teams behind them, and building a team, to your point, it takes a village. Building a team is like, I would argue that there are probably two things that are of the utmost importance if you're going to make films. And one of them is have people on the team who understand storytelling and make sure you understand storytelling. In fact, I think that's almost like in the modern day, people study other things too much, when if you just studied story, like it's almost like it's kind of like, oh, you need to know how the camera works perfectly, and you need to know like the lighting you're going to use perfectly. I think you'd get farther understanding storytelling than you would understanding the technology utilized, right? But the second thing that comes quickly behind that is building a good team, because there are things that you can't do. There's things that, like, so for example, I've studied storytelling for most of my life. so I've got like 30 plus years of studying storytelling. And but I don't have 30 plus years of studying lighting techniques. I know how I want it to be lit, but I don't know how to do it. You know what I mean? So then that means I got to go find somebody who's really good at that. And yeah, like I said, fortunately, like you're bringing up, like we've had pretty awesome teams that not only are capable and good, but also people you'd want to work with again because they're cool, right? So I don't think you always get that. So
Yeah, no, I could definitely understand. And especially like if I was making a movie and I needed someone that can, like do flips in the air and jump off buildings and, race cars that's going like 120 miles an hour, I just get Tom Cruise.
Yeah, just call it Tom Cruise. Why not?
But yeah, I definitely understand like what you mean of like how, you can have a vision of how you want everything, but can you actually do everything,
Right.
in your own? And no, you have to have somebody that, has that background that can take your vision
Yeah.
and then bring it to reality.
Yeah, there's we just won an award. No Vacancy just won an award yesterday or the day before. That was probably my favorite award that it's won. Although I am kind of partial to the best first time director award from the Red Movie Awards. But the reason why this other award was so cool for No Vacancy was because it's a monthly competition. And so there's all these films every single month that are competing for like film of the month, right?
Mhm.
Well, at the end of the year, they take all of those films and they say, okay, which one's the film of the year? And we just won best film of the year from what's called Top Shorts is the competition. Shout out to them because they're amazing. And I'm not just saying that because they chose us. Obviously, they're cool anyways. But they wrote up a review of No Vacancy. They did a whole review of it, and No Vacancy, Lucas was cool about this. Lucas put a Jay Sherer film on that movie, and they didn't mention my name once in the review they did of it. But here's why I love that, because it does take a village, I almost feel like it's almost more fun to celebrate the other people involved. They were like, Colleen is an amazing actress. I'm like, Colleen is an amazing actress. I'm so glad you brought that up. Sam Diaz, who did the music for No Vacancy and Disclosure. Sam Diaz is an awesome composer. Like he and I worked together really well, and he came up with these awesome scores for these two things. They mentioned Lucas Colombo, who is a fantastic cinematographer. Like I would reference those people if I were talking about this as well. So I think it's really fun to celebrate what a collection of people have gathered to accomplish when they all believe in it as much as we've believed in these two films.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like with us of how, we're like part of the fandom, but we're like the geeks of like cinema and like creating stories and what have you, where when you just kind of get like a greenhorn or a normie, they'll just look at just the people in front of the camera. Like for instance, like you take, like I remember going to see the Twilight series that they just re-released in theaters, and of how that was a phenomenon, and how like girls would go crazy over the stars and stuff. But then it's like you say, oh well, yeah, by the way, the films were directed by Bill Condon, and they're like, well, who the hell was that?
right. Oh, totally. Yeah, I do think that there is there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, but I do think that there is when you start to get involved in this is exactly to the point you're trying to make. When you do get involved in here's how I would equate it to like everybody's real world jobs. Most people work in an environment where there are salespeople, right? And the salespeople are kind of like out in front, like telling people about the products and telling people they should buy the products and all that kind of stuff. I would say that performers are kind of like the salespeople of the entertainment industry. Some of them are not only salespeople, but they're also executive people, right? But you usually think of like producers as the executives, and then you think of like directors as sort of like the CEO, and then there's all of these salespeople who show up on screen. Particularly the leads are even more kind of salespeople oriented, and they have to be awesome. but and because they're the people that the public see. No one's ever going to see me, right? Like unless they see me talking to you, they don't know that I directed the film at all. And I think that that's a really cool thing. But it also is a thing that I think a lot of people like. And for a long time, we're seeing this kind of change in the industry a little bit, because every single year, the biggest stars are still the Tom Cruises and the Brad Pitts who are in their 60s. Like that wasn't true necessarily. It was partially true because Sean Connery was a big star for a long time, but it used to be that you'd see a lot younger people being called stars. But I think the problem with that is that now young people are as interested in YouTube stars and Mr. Beast as they are in Zendaya. You know what I mean? Like, so it's changing a little bit, but I think that analogy is still kind of true, because if you don't have good salespeople, then it doesn't matter how good everybody else is. Your movie probably doesn't do that well. I mean, salespeople make it rain. Salespeople bring in revenue to the company, and that's just how celebrities are. That's the same kind of it's how your stars are. It's the same kind of deal. And so I think that but if you don't have a CEO, most people, you and I know exactly who Bob Iger is, and we know his track record, and we know like exactly what's going on. We probably can even quote his salary. I quoted his salary earlier today to somebody, and yet most people wouldn't know at all. But what do they know? They know the rides that they went on. They know the characters that they interacted with at the parks. Like those are the salespeople and the products. But somebody's got to be sitting back being like, yeah, but we all have to coordinate what we're doing here, right? And so that's just same. It's very similar to the film world. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that is very true, because you need the CEO to be able to drive the force, to get the salespeople of what is expected of them.
Totally.
But yet they then have to take their cue, and they're the face of what your vision is. And again, going back to like, it takes a village, that you need each person to do their job. And if they know what they're doing and they do it well, then it's a cohesive, well-oiled machine.
Exactly. 100%. It's a great analogy.
Yeah. Thank you. And it really is. And I absolutely, and I love your analogy too. That was perfect. Cool. So I have one last question for you.
Cool. Yeah.
For Disclosure, where do you see Disclosure? Where would you like to see Disclosure moving forward now that it's actually released? And I encourage everyone, obviously, if you watched our whole entire show right now, you got to watch it with us. But for anyone, please, definitely, I encourage you to go back, rewatch it, watch it independently, watch it with friends, watch it with family, have conversations about it. So now that it is out, in the public eye, in the public format, where would you like to see Disclosure moving forward?
Yeah. So the goal, what the business behind all of this is that we financed both the No Vacancy project and the Disclosure project. And short films aren't really meant to make money, right? Like you don't sell short films. You can. There are distributors who will buy short films and stuff like that, but it's not like you're probably going to make your money back from it. It's very unlikely that you would. They're not a good investment for looking at them as their own. There are people that do it, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying for most of us, they're not going to like return dollars to us. And
sorry about that. I made like 2,500 bootleg copies.
yeah, exactly. That would probably be a good thing. So what we use them for, and what a lot of people use them for, are what's called proof of concepts, which again, like in the business context, is sort of like a prototype, right? And what you do is you go around and show your prototype to investors, and you say, "Look, it's kind of like Shark Tank. It's not that different than Shark Tank, right? Here's my prototype. It's pretty cool. People really love it. Shouldn't we make more of them, right, or whatever?" And what we're saying is with these two films is these are our films. We hope that you can see that we take this seriously. We hope you can see that we love what we do. We hope you can also see that we are respectful of your money and want to generate the best possible product. And we're just going to go pitch, just like you would in Shark Tank, sort of, to executives, to studios, to independent investors, in an effort to get the feature films made. And so they have something to see. They have something to look at and be like, wow, no vacancy. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Oh, if I do like it, then yeah, well, you guys should go make this movie. You know, if I don't like it, then we'll move on to the next one, right? So that's really the next goal, is that I'm going to try and get representation, and then head out into the wild blue yonder, trying to raise money and shoot a feature.
Nice. Awesome. And as I said, you know, anytime that you want to, you know, come on here and talk about any, you know, future endeavors and projects, you know, I always want to have you back on. So that way, you know, you have another, you know, format to, you know, to tell your stories.
Yeah, and I'm super grateful. It's always fun to talk to you, and your knowledge of the industry and in storytelling means that it's a really fun experience for me. So thank you for that. By the way, if anybody wants to, they can help us out. One of the things you can do on IMDb and Disclosure, there's like a million movies called Disclosure. So if you're going to look for Disclosure on IMDb, search for Disclosure and then my name. You just put Jay Sherer Disclosure in there and it'll come up. But what you can do is give it a rating. So if you liked it, you can go on there and you can say like, oh, I want to give this a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 or whatever. I'm not going to tell you what to rate it. Rate it whatever you want to. But that helps us out a lot too, because then that just gets more attention on it. And I think that that's pretty cool. So yeah, do that. If you get a chance and you want to help us out, we would love it if you would do that.
Awesome. There you go, folks. And Jay, again, I want to thank you so much for joining today and for sharing Disclosure with us all, just like you did with No Vacancy. I can't wait to see your feature length film, because like that's going to be a banger. That I absolutely love both of your short film subject matter, so I can't wait to see what it looks like in a feature length format. And again, everyone, please, as I said, you watch Disclosure with us, but definitely go check it out again for yourself. Watch it, rewatch it, share it out to your friends, family, neighbors, your pets. Let your pets, you know. I'm for sure, honestly, a lot of animals have the capable intelligence of reading, you know. Yeah, absolutely. But Jay, again, thanks for coming on. And if you want to let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube, How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. That's where my films are. No Vacancy is actually coming out later because it was on the festival circuit. So George got to see like a special preview of it, but it'll be out in probably like January on the main channel. But it's How Stories Work with Jay Sherer, where I'm either basically How Stories Work with Jay Sherer is me trying to understand other movies, why people like them, why I like them, what directors and actors and producers did to make us like them. I'm studying that stuff so that I can make good films. And that's what I do over at How Stories Work. I kind of document that process. So if you want to see any of that stuff, I just did a video on breaking down just one scene from Sicario and how that scene is so good, and all the detail that Denis Villeneuve puts into it, which is amazing. So yeah, if you want that, or if you want to watch the films, we also have a Star Wars short film that came out about almost 10 years ago. You can watch that too over at How Stories Work with Jay Sherer.
Awesome. And of course, I will be having Jay back on for more you know, filmmaking talks and you know, studio talk, because I mean, he's the guy that, again, I could really like nerd out with that kind of stuff. So I will definitely be having him back on Hollow Gelato. And of course, I'm George, the Disney Italiano, and as I always say in Disney Italiano fashion, stay safe, stay healthy, stay Disney. Italiano out.